Okay, so I'm going to take the stuff that we did in our last video, which is we were using the char data type and providing, doing math on the character to increase a letter or decrease a letter to get its capital or its lowercase, depending on what was input. And so what we talked about was the fact that when we receive an input next line, when we got the next line that we're getting, we could potentially not just get a single character, but we could be getting, in fact, a whole sentence. And in fact, next line is going to take all of the characters that are entered at the keyboard, including the enter key. So let's assume then, here we just took whatever at face value and we just returned the single character. But let's do this. Let's take the entire string that they input and make each letter individually uppercase. So this seems like a good candidate for a while statement. So let's see. First of all, I'm going to use user letter, which is a string, and I'm going to use the method length. And so user letter. So what we need to know is that this is going to be, it's going to return a value, number of characters equals, okay. So what we're getting back here is a number, and length is giving us how many letters or characters are in that string that was returned from the keyboard. And we're going to keep that number here in num characters. So now that we have that, we can create a while loop that's going to loop through each character, and in each character we'll change it to toggle the case on it. So we're going to create a while loop, and I'm going to say, let's see, let's make this a little bit more clear. Int I equals 0, so I'm going to use I as my counter. And while I is less than our word length, number of characters, there's my spelling again. You know, it's easier if I just copy and paste that. There we go. Okay, while I is less than number of characters, then we're going to do all of this conversion. Okay, I'm going to indent that so it's clear to read. Okay, so here's the code that we had before that's taking everything and making it uppercase. Here I'm going to replace 0, which is the first instance, the first letter in that string, and we're going to make it I, which means I need to be incrementing I each time, I plus plus. So what I've just done is I'm using I as a counter or as a placeholder, and each time we loop through this loop, we're going to, because I is being incremented by 1, the first time I is 0, and so it's going to pull off the first location of our string, the first letter in our string. And then I increment I, so I is now 1 the next time. It's going to print out, it's going to pull out the second value, the second placeholder, the second letter in our string, and so on. And then it should continue to toggle my case. Now, I'm going to change this to print, so it'll print on the same line and not on new lines. And then let's go ahead and run this and see how we do. So this is a sentence. So if we did this right, everything should get alternated around, which it did. My cases are all altered. Okay, so another way to do this, if we didn't want to do it with a while loop, let's do it with a for loop. So let's see, I'm going to comment this out. And for loop is going to work a little bit differently, but nonetheless, for, I'm going to do int I equals 0 just to do it a different way. I'm going to do I less than num characters, and then I should do that copy and paste again since I obviously have challenges spelling, and then do an I plus plus. So there's my I incrementer, and I don't have to do it here. And so this is also not needed anymore, so I can get rid of that. And it's saying we still have an error, and our error now is, what is it upset about here? It's saying, oh, that we might not have an initialized variable, but we should right here. So let's run this and see what we get. It doesn't like what I've done. So let's see what I've done. If I cap in an A. Let's see. It is upset on this line. It's telling me that I have not initialized my letter. Oh, okay. All right, so this is kind of a confusing error message. It's misleading. And it's saying, it's giving me an error message that says variable letter might not have been initialized, which is trying to say that I'm casting a variable that never got a value. And I'm looking at the code saying, well, yes, it did get a value. We gave it one right here. And this is very misleading, and so this is where sometimes it can get a little frustrating. But our error is the fact that I've got a bracket that's closing, but once I commented out my while statement, I lost my opening bracket. So once I put in my closing bracket, my opening bracket, now I have matches. Notice that my error goes away. That was frustrating. Okay, so I'm going to run it now, and this is a sentence, and in fact, all of those should now be converted. In fact, this is really hard to read, so I think maybe at the end of my loop here, I will print system.out.print. Spelling is, I'm tired of hearing that. Print line, there we go. So now I should have, here is a sentence. And in fact, we can see that it got converted. Notice that I put in a 3. Well, the minus 32 didn't make sense there. So anyway, that is a while loop. That's also a for loop review. And again, it certainly would have been simpler just to use the method to uppercase or to lowercase. But this is a good example of utilizing the input, our next line. So we're getting in a whole line. And we're looping through each character individually, and then making the appropriate uppercase or lowercase individually and toggling that. And yeah, so that's char data types.